I would request you to kindly rise and welcome him with an applause. Thank you. I apologize very much, sorry. May I request you all to kindly settle down, please?
Hello, 1, 2, 3, mic check, check mic. Hello. Hello, 1, 2, 3, mic check, check mic. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, mic check, check mic. Hello, 1, 2, 3, mic check, check mic.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia has arrived. Kindly rise and welcome him with applause. Good evening, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Indian Council of World Affairs, I welcome you all to the 50th Sapru House Lecture to be delivered by the Honorable Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia, on the theme Towards a Rising Global South, Leveraging on Malaysia-India Ties. We begin our program with welcome remarks by Ambassador Somen Bakchi, Acting Director General ICWA, which would be followed by the 50th Sapru House Lecture by the Honorable Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. The Sapru House Lecture will be followed by a question and answer session moderated by the Chair. May I now request Ambassador Bakchi Acting Director General ICWA, to kindly make his welcome remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to ICWA Sapru House. I would like to extend firstly on behalf of the Indian Council of World Affairs a warm welcome to His Excellency Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, who has honored us today with his presence. I heartily welcome his esteemed delegation, members who are with us today, and my thanks also go out to our guests, the local diplomatic corps, former diplomats of India, the press corps, students and others. The Sapru House lecture series, of which this is a part, began in 2012, and we have had the good fortune of listening to the thoughts of many leaders and visionaries since then. Earlier this month, we had the privilege of listening to the Prime Minister of Vietnam, His Excellency Pham Minh Chinh, and today we have another ASEAN head of government, the PM of Malaysia, sharing his vision and his thoughts with us. While today's lecture is on the Global South, allow me to speak briefly on our bilateral relations. Malaysia is India's key partner in ASEAN and an important country in our Act East policy and in India's vision of the Indo-Pacific. The enhanced strategic partnership between India and Malaysia, established in 2015 during our PM's visit there, has revitalized our bilateral ties. Both nations have resolved to further deepen these ties by agreeing to work together, to work towards an ambitious agenda of cooperation for the next decade of the enhanced partnership. And the visit of the Honorable Prime Minister shall surely add new momentum to the pursuit of this agenda. India-Malaysia bilateral engagements have diversified across a wide range of areas of cooperation, from political exchanges to defense partnership, commerce and investment, development cooperation, and people-to-people relations. Malaysia has emerged as the 16th largest trading partner for India, whereas India figures among the 10 largest trading partners for Malaysia. Our bilateral trade today is nearly $20 billion per annum. Malaysia's national oil company and one of the world's prominent oil majors, Petronas, is active in India across sectors such as crude oil trading, LPG, LNG, petrochemicals and lubricants. 70-odd Malaysian companies have a presence here, and nearly 150 Indian companies are operating in Malaysia. Defense cooperation is another pillar of our bilateral cooperation, and regular bilateral exercises are held between the two countries. The next step forward could be to develop a strategic defense partnership through enhanced industry collaborations, including R&D. We also share a rich diaspora connection with a 2.9 million strong Indian origin community in Malaysia. Connectivity between the two countries continues to improve, and Malaysia is rising up in the ranks of destinations popular with Indian tourists. Normally in opening remarks of Sapru House lectures, it is customary to speak either on the subject or on bilateral relations between India and the country whose leader is present. But I think my remarks will not be complete if I don't allude a little to the person that is Anwar bin Ibrahim. For PM Anwar is not an ordinary leader, politician or prime minister. In fact, far from it. His bioprofile that you have with you is a testament to his enormous intellectual prowess and leadership abilities. The sheer range and variety of the national and international positions that he has graced is mind-boggling. They highlight the talents and abilities of an exceptional individual, someone in a league of his own. From the highest positions in national politics, to the UN, the World Bank and the IMF, to the universities of Oxford, Johns Hopkins and Georgetown, it's a range that is simply staggering. But even these exalted positions do not tell the whole story. the inspiring story of a man who is unputdownable, who gets knocked down but rises stronger each time. A man whose struggles have been no less epic than his successes. A man who has seen life at its most beautiful, but also at its most brutal. And I'm sure some of you also know that PM Anwar is a globally acknowledged authority on the works of William Shakespeare, one of his passions. We are, ladies and gentlemen, in the presence of a truly extraordinary human being, a towering intellectual, and a leader of immense courage and resilience. It is an opportune moment today to speak on the Global South, coming as it does 2 days after the third Voice of Global South Summit was held virtually last weekend. The Global South continues to rise, perhaps slowly but surely, and that is a welcome development for humanity as a whole, coming as it does after centuries of injustice, exploitation of man and resource, flight of capital, and the consequent impoverishment and backwardness. And who better to speak to us about a rising Global South than the leader of a country that is a shining example of this rise, Malaysia. I now invite His Excellency Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim to deliver the 50th Sapru House lecture on the theme towards a rising Global South. Sir.
Thank you, Somabachi, Ambassador, for the very kind remarks. I really hope to use his expertise to come and campaign in Malaysia for me. Thank you again, and to ICWA. Now, I'm here on the invitation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, and I must, on behalf of my delegation, thank him and the Indian government for the hospitality and also the attitude, general attitude, beyond diplomacy, to consider us as great friends and to engage in a series of discussions covering multifaceted aspects from defense to digital to trade and investments, food security, and that could only happen in not only through normal diplomatic channels, but through friendship and trust. Now, India is, to me, it remains an enigma. I've been here umpteen times as a student leader, and I told Suman Bakchi that I had the occasion, even as a young student leader, to have a session with Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, 9 youth leaders from Asia, confronting her a number of issues, and observe her candor and motherly attitude to deal with some very pernicious questions raised by young leaders on issue of corruption, on issue of racism, on issue of religious bigotry, and a number of issues. And so that shows somewhat a familiarity with India. I was at the Vishwa Yuva Kendra some years back. No, not some years back, some decades back. But it remains an enigma. This is a country that produced Sri Aurobindo, an outstanding intellect. Leaders like Gandhi ji, which is of course unique in his battle for freedom, for justice, for humanity. You have intellectual giants who became leaders in their own countries, Jawaharlal Nehru and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And so how do I then compare myself listening to your kind remarks and to these great sages and towering intellectuals or intellectual luminaries? So may I humbly begin by acknowledging the fact that you, India, have produced great sages and leaders, and considered by many of us as a beacon of hope and democracy in the region. I will not denying the fact that you also have to grapple with some serious issues of affecting the minorities or religious sentiments, but our hope is that India continue to play its role, rightful role, because I mentioned to Prime Minister Modi, these are the years when Nehru and Chow En-lai and Sukarno and Nyerere were all there standing up for the global south against colonialism and imperialism, and to struggle to ensure that we recognize what humanity is all about, what freedom is all about, and what dignity of men and women. So that is the global south that we envisage. And I think this opportunity to speak at Sapru House, you have also, as you mentioned, hosted notable architects of foreign policy. I'm not one of them, unfortunately, but struggling to try to emulate the great successes of the past. And more so because when I mention Nehru, I must mention Tunku Abdul Rahman, the father of Malaysian independence. And they became friends, great friends at that. Not only in terms of bilateral ties, which remain strong and unmoved, but sharing a common zeal for democracy and freedom. Today, in this era of uncertainty, we look back to our leaders for their ideas and efforts in shaping norms that have reverberated throughout the region and resonate with us now, more than ever. Whither do we go and what shall be our endeavor? That's a question in the trees for destiny, which was again mentioned or referred to, not this particular question, but by Prime Minister Modi in his speech. Now, that question was succinctly answered in dealing with the issue of the way forward. Nehru answered, to bring freedom and opportunity to the common man, to the peasants and workers of India, to fight and end poverty and ignorance and diseases, to build up a prosperous, democratic, and progressive nation, and to create social, economic, and political institutions which we will ensure justice and fullness of life to every man and woman. A very powerful, empathic message to India and democratic nations throughout the world. In a world fraught with challenges and uncertainties, it is an unwavering commitment to these principles that will guide us towards a brighter, more just tomorrow. The legacy of the Founding Fathers is not merely a testament to their time, but a timeless beacon, urging us to dream, to strive, and to forge ahead with undaunted courage and unshakable resolve. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, keeping the theme of my lecture in mind, let me begin with the assertion that the Global South represents the reclaiming of a voice that can no longer be ignored in the emerging international order. As a driver of global prosperity, the Global South totally accounts roughly 40% of world GDP and around 85% of the world's population. By 2030, 3 of the 4 largest economies will be from the Global South, one of them, of course, being India. Now, the resurgence of Global South narratives and the desire for greater participation in the international system has pushed regional powers to the forefront, with opportunities to exert agency and shape the discourse around what a Global South agenda should look like. Indeed, at this geopolitical juncture, where strategic uncertainties and anxieties are commonplace, anchoring ourselves to pushing a common collective good with level playing fields for all should be the ultimate goal of a Global South agenda. An empowered Global South, as I see, is inevitable. There are now real opportunities to push the envelope on addressing global challenges on terms that we can set in consultation with one another. And this, of course, on pressing issues that we all still finding our footing on: climate change, supply chain resilience, food security, and artificial intelligence governance. On the part of Malaysia, we believe that the rise of Global South unites us in all our diversity, differences, and discretions. The Global South, despite overwhelmingly negative connotations from detractors, is not meant to exclude the Global North. In fact, Global South mobilization is predicated on the acceptance of our growing agency and the desire to work together as equals within our complex strategic context. And to me, India has welcomed this reality with grace. For vision, and most importantly, a plan. India's excellent G20 chairmanship last year and the inaugural Voice of Global South Summit made it amply clear that India is prepared to shape the Global South agenda with its partners. In fact, Malaysia also shares the pride of the African Union's inclusion into the G20 and is deeply cognizant of the immense value these partners and regions bring to the table. While we have made significant strides in our bilateral cooperation, there's still much room for further strengthening. It was with that in mind that Prime Minister Modi and I earlier today agreed to elevate our ties to comprehensive strategic partnership. This will give due recognition to our shared priorities of connectivity, sustainable economic growth, green development, technological transformation, and delivery of public goods. As we look forward to closer ties between our two countries, it will do us good to take stock of the progress we have made in recent years, and nowhere is this more evident than in the realm of trade. Today, trade between Malaysia and India stands at $16.5 billion, expanding, bolstered by an impressive compounded annual growth rate of 8.5% in the last 2 decades, and more convincing in the last quarter. This growth trajectory is not just a statistic, but a testament to the deepening economic linkages facilitated by the framework such as the Malaysia-India Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement and the ASEAN-India Free Trade Agreement. Moreover, the evolution of trade composing between our nations, trade composition between our nations, with our mirrors the broader economic transformations within Malaysia and India. 2 decades ago, palm oil and petroleum products dominated Malaysia's export to India, making up nearly 2/3 of the total. However, as Malaysia's economy has diversified, so too has our trade portfolio. Today, these primary commodities account for just 1/3 of exports to India, with electrical and electronic products becoming key export items. This shift underscores Malaysia's transition towards higher value-added industries. Clearly, both Malaysia and India have come a long way in our economic partnership. The transformation in trade dynamics is not just reflective of our growing economic capabilities, but also of the strategic agreements that have underpinned this growth. With such foundational elements of our trade relationship, the road ahead is highly promising, offering vast opportunities for further economic collaboration and growth. I do not exaggerate when I say that stronger Malaysia-India ties are consequential to a better connected global South. As one of the best connected Southeast Asian countries to India by air, Malaysia is strategically positioned to encourage seamless movement between our regions for business, education, and tourism. We must include tourism, otherwise the Minister of Tourism would object. We are also cognizant of India's efforts at connecting to Southeast Asia by road and look forward to early operationalization of the India-Myanmar-Thailand trilateral highway, which will be of value to Malaysia as well. In addition, our joint membership of the Indian Ocean Rim Association gives us the opportunity to push for change and development. I must at this time commend India for leading the drafting of the IORA's outlook on the Indo-Pacific, which I'm sure will contextualize and put our efforts in perspective. On the topic of international cooperation, we must not forget how a defining feature of the international system at this time is minilateralism. Malaysia believes that minilateral mechanisms ultimately work towards the delivery of public goods to benefit our people and raise the standards of living. In that vein, Malaysia will not shy away from exercising agency and participating in these arrangements as we see it. Our recent application to join BRICS is a fine example. By participating in BRICS, we aim to diversify our economic diplomacy efforts and enhance our collaboration with member countries through shared initiatives and strategic partnership. India's distinct and influential role within BRICS is of particular importance, as we recognize that our strong bilateral ties will add significant value to the dynamics of the grouping. We are confident that our entry into this group will not only strengthen our economic linkages with India, but also open new avenues for cooperation across a broader spectrum of industries and policy areas. Excellencies, friends and colleagues, let me now turn my attention to our regional and sub-regional mechanism, which will be instrumental in shaping the Global South agenda. As upcoming ASEAN chair, Malaysia will not only focus on the strengthening existing ASEAN mechanisms and institutions and making them fit for the purpose, but also find synergies with other frameworks that are crucial for regional development and prosperity. In this context, India, as one of ASEAN's long-standing dialogue partners, plays a pivotal role. The ASEAN-India partnership has been instrumental in fostering economic growth, security cooperation, and cultural exchange across the region. We see great potential in deepening this collaboration, particularly as we seek to align ASEAN's priorities with broader initiatives that support the Global South. By working closely with India and other dialogue partners, we can ensure that ASEAN remains at the forefront of regional integration and continue to be a driving force for sustainable development in the region. Our centrality is pivotal because we can now engage with India, with China, with United States and Europe that will strengthen not only ASEAN, but the trading, investments, and diplomatic skills and also engagements with other parts of the world. Now, secondly, enhance engagement between ASEAN and the Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation will not only connect our regions, but shed light on challenges, needs, and priorities which are not always considered mainstream. These challenges, which may be rooted in the very geography that shapes our landscapes, the unique demographics that define our populations, or the particular resources that sustain our livelihood, are the silent yet potent forces that must be acknowledged and addressed. In this endeavor, the essence of the Global South agenda must be nothing less than an intrinsic mobilization, one that is firmly anchored on our shared norms and values, and which honors the extraordinary diversity that characterize the Global South. I made a visit to India in an unprecedented time. Competition, rivalry, and intense geopolitical flux is now status quo. We live and breathe in interregnum, waiting for life as we know it to stabilize and revert to a phase we are familiar with. But the harsh reality is that institutions and structures that we have known to function and thrive with can no longer respond effectively to the challenges of the day. India, as a rising power, has showed remarkable resilience and acumen in navigating the geopolitical uncertainties we find ourselves in today. India's unique multi-aligned approach, which requires an astute and adept compartmentalization of priorities and challenges, is worth learning from, especially from the vantage point of Southeast Asian country at the heart of the emerging Indo-Pacific order. Let me pause and reiterate that the relationship between India and Malaysia is forged on the anvil of robust, vibrant, and animated trade, commercial, and cultural ties. But above all, fortified through shared experiences, a common goal, and thriving on the familial bonds of kinship going back centuries. Our ties possess a formidable power to shape perceptions, a unique dynamic testifying to the extraordinary nature of our connection, one that transcends mere diplomacy and touches the very core of our shared existence. Whereas the Atlantic Ocean must bear the dark history of imperial expansion, gruesome colonialism, and chattel slavery, and the Pacific Ocean world is readied with tensions and at the epicenter of the renewal of the Cold War. Here in the Indian Ocean world, we can create a stable and resilient backbone for the global economy. We must say no to the naysayers who contend that multiculturalism, inclusivism, and shared prosperity are mere constructs of convenience that are impossible of fulfillment because, as they say, man is an economic animal driven by the instinct of self-preservation and self-aggrandizement. We reject such a notion, one that bears the wretched order of isolationism and venerates the false gods of exclusivism and protectionism, because we believe that no man is an island and no one people can prosper truly without the help and cooperation of others. Nevertheless, we cannot be blind to our innate and deep-rooted connections with the Pacific and Atlantic links. We are not in the business of building doors, let alone walls, but in fortifying the bridges that bind. The immortal words of Mahatma Gandhi come to mind. Hate the sin and not the sinner is a precept which, though easy enough to understand, is rarely practical or rarely practiced. And that's why the poison of hatred spreads in the world. Looming over us is the menacing threat of extremism in all its myriads, forms, and ill will, rancor and animosity that are bred from absolute dogmas. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, Jews, Christians, Buddhists. That reminds me of the old Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Nasara, Avarao, I think this is Raj Kapoor, whatever. We share sources of knowledge, and in that common treasury of memories, we vindicate our shared values of truth, of ethics, of humanity, and our innate desire for peace. We must stand against interreligious violence, from the aggressions we see every day to the politics of dispossession that violently uproots and displaces millions of Palestinians, and the genocide that continue to unleash the slaughter of thousands of innocent lives. We can all agree, regardless of our backgrounds, that this is certainly neither our higher calling nor the higher purpose of the human race, to put down and destroy one another. Friends and colleagues, the road we stand upon will not run smooth. We are poised at the cusp of formidable changes, movements in the world that set it spinning slightly differently with each circumrotation. And yes, there will always be hazards ahead, hidden in the shadows, but we must resolve to be fearless in facing them, remembering that true greatness lies not in avoiding the storms of life, but in weathering them with unwavering resolve. In our tireless pursuit of a harmonious and just world, where peace reigns and equanimity is our guiding star, we are reminded of the profound wisdom of the illustrious Rabindranath Tagore. His words echo through the corridors of time, urging us to embrace not the comforts of safety, but the unyielding courage to confront adversity headlong. Let me not pray to be sheltered from dangers, but to be fearless in facing them, the great Tagore. In this haven for architects of thought, where the very air thrums with the energy of that unceasing task which is nation building, let us resolve to forge a future together that's illuminated by the brilliance of our shared endeavors, with the unwavering commitment to the ideals that define us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those inspiring remarks, the words of a true visionary. Ladies and gentlemen, we have time. The Prime Minister's kindly agreed to take a few questions, so we have a few minutes for that. Please raise, those interested in asking questions, please raise your hands, identify yourself, and keep your questions brief and to the point. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Shreya. I'm a student from Lady Shri Ram. And this year, India hosted a multilateral military war game called Milan. And Malaysia, along with other ASEAN countries, participated as well. So do you think this could collaboratively lead to an effective development in a strategic maritime security strategy that could potentially address the challenges in the South China Sea and the Malacca Strait, such as IUU fishing, etc., and also potentially restrain China's Blue Dragon strategy?
No, I think I will respond briefly to say that the ASEAN position, the Malaysian position of centrality to engage with all countries. We have not encountered problems with India. Therefore, we continue to have an engagement, including common defense strategy. We have not encountered problems with China, and therefore our relations remain excellent, and we should use that peace and trust to enhance the collaborative efforts in all fields. That's our position. And therefore, when we talk about maritime or defense strategy or engagement or collaboration, we take in a positive light to contain terrorism, to contain undue threats, or whatever attempts to scuttle the peace process. But otherwise, our position remains like ASEAN, centrality that want to engage with all our neighbors. Because in the ASEAN region, as you know, with the slight skirmishes within domestic issues of Myanmar, it is the most peaceful sub-region in the world and the fastest growing sub-region in the world. And it is to our advantage we keep that format and work together with our important neighbors. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. My name is Pramit Lahiri. I am a LAM Fellow, which stands for Legislative Assistant to a Member of Parliament. So, sir, thank you so much for this speech. My question is this, that given the rising uncertainties, as you were saying, regarding climate change, I wanted to know your thoughts on how do you approach on building climate resilient structures and economies and partner with India in this same line of thought. Thank you so much.
Well, certain initiatives taken by India is impressive in terms of dealing with climate change, but as you know, this is a global calamity that requires a global resolve. We have, of course, COP28, COP29, the pledge by the rich nations to provide the initial $100 billion has not been forthcoming. Typically, the condescending attitude of certain powers that be would just impose and dictate and hector. And we thought that we have had enough of that. That is why I think the position taken by the Global South is to me paramount, because we can address the situation and compel the others to also participate. You destroyed half the, I mean, you create this problem and then we are supposed to resolve all the issues. I mean, this is of course unacceptable. That is why to my mind, what we can do, we'll do the maximum. I mean, even Malaysia was a small country. 50% is still remains forest, most of it virgin jungles. But what else do you do elsewhere? That's why their commitment is also pertinent. It's no longer, hectoring is no longer acceptable. It's a common resolve, save the world is a major problem. Now, notwithstanding whether they are doing it or not, we can't avoid. That is why I think the collaboration between the Global South has to take a position. We ourselves need to do it, and I think most countries in the South have taken that position, but we should also use this forum to compare the rest, to respect order, and be more realistic in terms of their position by showing a good example and taking up part of the responsibility. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello. Yeah, So my name is Ashutosh. I am a student from Jamia. So my question is actually very particular. It pertains to the palm oil export ban that India had. It pertains to the palm oil export ban, and so regarding that, since major export of Malaysia has been the palm oil to India, it accounts for about 2/3, as you have already said. So, do you look to diversify this bilateral trade ties between India and Malaysia? Because the 4 months ban really affected the economy and the trade part of India and Malaysia. So, please respond.
As you know, as I alluded to in the speech, even by Ambassador, that initially the dependence was mainly on palm oil in the exports. Now, of course, gone to 1/3. But India is, of course, a major importer of palm oil, and we are thankful to that. And we're also diversifying. Malaysia in the region is the most important hub for semiconductor. But it has got to go through a phase. Initially, our dependence was rubber and tin. Similarly, it is changing. The only problem is, of course, some countries in Europe and the United States, in their campaign, vigorous campaign against the use of palm oil, but more so to protect soya bean. So we have to deal with this. But I think certainly we are diversifying, and that is why it is also important strategically to open up and broadening the range of investments and trade between Malaysia and India, beyond what is deemed to be traditional products.
Yes.
Hi, sir. This is Abhishek Jha from CNN News 18. You talked about countering radicalism and extremism in this region also. There is one religious preacher whom the Indian agencies have been wanting to question for a long time, and there is an appeal for extradition also. I'm talking about Zakir Naik. So my question is, did that issue was also discussed when you had a meeting with Prime Minister? And what is Malaysia's stand on this extradition process that Indian agencies have been wanting?
Well, firstly, it was not raised by the Prime Minister. He did raise it much earlier, many years back. But the issue is, I'm not talking about one person. I'm talking about the sentiment of extremism, of compelling case and evidence that suggest the atrocities committed by an individual, a group, a faction, or parties. These are of concern to us. The atrocities of Israeli forces in Gaza, that's real, and killing 40,000 people. That is atrocity, that is fanaticism as far as I'm concerned. Now, issues if raised by countries to contain, to secure understanding, and to ensure that we have good bilateral relations would continue. And we are open to any ideas, and if evidence submitted, we will not condone terrorism. But you have to produce a compelling case to support. And we have been tough. We've been working together with India in many of these issues against terrorist cells. But I don't think one case should deter us from further collaboration and enhancing our bilateral cooperation.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. This is Yeshi Seli from the New Indian Express. I have two small questions. Prime Minister Modi spoke about trade in local currencies between India and Malaysia. Can you throw light on that? And also, our neighbors, whether it is Bangladesh or Myanmar, are unstable right now. Did that come up for discussion? Were there any things that you talked about?
The decision to use as much as possible local currency is something which we acknowledge as important, a priority. Our central bank has agreed the use of rupees and ringgit. We have done so successfully. At least 20% of our trade with China or 18% with Thailand, or close to 20% with Indonesia. So we're expanding this to use local currency denominations in our trade. And I certainly responded very positively to the proposal by Prime Minister Modi on the need to use local currency, rupees and ringgit. And I think it's time that countries in the global south wake up and depend on themselves and their comrades rather than depending on the more obsolete monetary system that has weakened our position in many fields. On the issue of Myanmar, yes, we did discuss. We're a bit concerned about the developments now, but I think we need to engage a bit more. ASEAN position of the 5-point consensus is not to recognize. But notwithstanding that, we do accept the need to engage at the different level. And I've mentioned this because India can participate in this process. We are all concerned. Now, on Bangladesh, the development, of course, is still being debated. I did make a call to Professor Muhammad Yunus to say that, you know, we wish them well, hopefully country is stable and protect the issue of human rights and the rights of minorities. He has given categorical assurance to that effect, and we need to give them some time. And we, as neighbors, particularly India, I mean, should do whatever we can to ensure that there's a peaceful transition in Bangladesh, what the people decide, but finally through a democratic process. And I just hope well for people of Bangladesh, and I think our duty is to make sure that there is peace immediately, and then the transition that they plan should happen as soon as possible, particularly democratic transition, because economically they were doing relatively well, and they need to sustain that and probably enhance that or propel economic growth. Thank you.
Yes.
Prime Minister Razaul Hassan with the Hindustan Times. I was just wondering if we could throw some more light on the cooperation with India in food security. There has been, Malaysia has been wanting more rice from India, and you know, there has been, I think, one consignment that was approved today. If you could throw some more light on food security cooperation.
Well, we did a little bit on this, and the technical committees and must work, and our style of governing something a bit different. We say in 3 months, we need to have specific programs to be forwarded by the officers, to be submitted to both prime ministers. But on food security is, of course, a priority. We still spent about close to $15 billion of import, which is totally unacceptable for a country that's with fertile land and abandoned land at our disposal. But we're doing it. We have asked Indian support for their technology, for the expertise, research, and jointly they have asked also to assist in some field areas, including palm oil, which we will, of course, reciprocate positively. And we still import rice, and I've asked for the assurance of Prime Minister to make sure that the supply is stable from India. But I think both in the research, in the technological transfer, in joint operations, in investments and food security was given a priority in our discussions. And incidentally, the Hindustan Times have been kind to me in my period of adversity. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Good evening, Prime Minister. This is Manas Pratim Huyan. I work with PTI, Press Trust of India. It's a news agency. I'd like to ask you about the overall situation in Indo-Pacific, particularly in the context of great power competition that we have seen in that region. And there have been criticisms against the formation of various blocs. Case in point is Quad. So how do you see Quad's overall agenda, particularly vis-a-vis the Indo-Pacific and overall situation, your assessment?
Our position, as I said, centrality is to avoid any action or decision or policy or move that could be construed to be unnecessarily provocative. So that position to me is paramount, is pertinent in ensuring a peaceful region, particularly the Asia Pacific, both in the Indian Ocean or the Chinese, South China Sea. And I think that position should be respected. As far as we are concerned, bilaterally we should engage, multilaterally we should engage. So any move that it could be deemed, it may not be intentionally construed as provocative, but if it's seen by the other side provocative, you need to engage and avoid, because there's too much at stake. And to me, politics and governance is about welfare of the people, not ego of one or two personalities. Our people have suffered immensely, and it is our commitment, having leading governments and leaders, to ensure that we have policies that remain sane, to focus on the welfare of people. And this is, to me, an excellent time, post-COVID, after such hardship. It is time that we refocus. That is why I can, for example, be strong in some of my views, be it the oppression in Myanmar or the colonization of Gaza, but for our region we should avoid. We have learned in the sub-regions where there is calamity, where there is wars, it is the people that suffer. Thank you.
We have overshot our time, but since Prime Minister has been so kind in answering questions, yes, we perhaps can have one or two more, please.
In future, if yuan was to supersede the dollar, would Malaysia have any problem with that in a rising global south?
You ask about the future. Normally when people ask me about the future, I say, "Okay, Sarah." No, jokes aside. No, why should be tight? I mean, we use the dollar. It's still an important agency for exchange. But why should we be obsessed or dependent on that? What we are doing now is to work on a viable alternative that will be more just. I told the Prime Minister during the bilateral session, you know, last year, investments grew. Growth was impressive. Inflation was down, low, 2%. Unemployment, 3%. And still, major attack on the ringgit. Nothing to do with economic fundamentals. Just what Fed in Washington, D.C. decide. So there's nothing much we can do except to use other avenues where we can help resolve and ease the impact. That is why, whilst we still are dependent in some areas, but the transactions in dollars, but we use our own local currency denominations to ensure that at least we have certain percentage into our deals that could probably reduce the negative impact. Because finally, in managing an economy, we talk about fundamentals. The fundamentals are well guarded, and there are tough measures. Subsidy rationalization, ensure that the quality education and public health and basic infrastructure, all being done. And good governance, wiping or combating against excesses and corruption, all moves are being done. But still, we are finally subjected to the decision at the Fed. This, of course, is nothing about a fair international architecture. No. I used to be, one time, even chairman of the World Bank and IMF, or Development Committee. My position remains consistent. I mean, the over-dependence of a system that do not cater for the interests of the majority, or the principle of just order, be it in the trade or in financial architecture, is cannot be accepted any longer. Now, since we do not have the capacity to change now, we do it in our own way, at least reduce the impact. And I think if we can use, for example, with the $20 billion trade, of $80 billion trade, a fraction, 20%, 30% in our local currency, it will ease the negative impact.
Yes, sir, please.
I am Bassem Hillis from Palestinian Embassy. I want to thank you very much, Prime Minister, because you are mentioned about our situation in Palestine, exactly in Gaza. We hope in the future stop this aggression to our civilian Palestinian people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think in India is quite familiar from the time of Mahatma Gandhi. That position was strong and uncompromising. And I think what we try to do is just to at least give a message, a very clear message. But this hypocrisy must end. I mean, you can't talk about genocide in Ukraine because bombings of some villages and 40,000 people killed. Well, these are, impact of war. We can condone that. But this is shocking, and I call it sheer hypocrisy. But notwithstanding, it has to end. I mean, it does not matter whether the victims are Muslims or Christians or Hindus or Buddhists or whatever. I mean, they are human beings, and in this age, for us to be, just to feel that, I'm sorry, nothing can be done. It's atrocious. I used to refer to Edward Said's politics of dispossession. I mean, we fought, India, Malaysia, Algeria, Vietnam, all fought against colonialism. There is no right for any country, for whatever reason, to conquer, control, dispossess any other society or country. But why give exception to Palestine and Gaza? Well, because some of the terrorists. Tell me in which country you don't have terrorists in many forms and outlets. But our position on terrorism is clear, it's uncompromising. But so it is tough, it's difficult, not necessarily popular, but I think in politics and governance, Ambassador would know sometimes we have to do what is right. I think again, I remember Gandhiji said, what is morally right cannot be politically wrong, what's politically right cannot be morally wrong. The great Mahatma Gandhi. But who bothers now? So be patient and may God help us.
Thank you very much for that answer, Prime Minister. We can take one last question, perhaps. Yeah? Gentleman at the back.
Yang Amat Berhormat Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia. Selamat datang dan terima kasih kerana melawat India. I'm Rahul Mishra, Associate Professor at JNU. I had the privilege to teach at University Malaya for 6 years till last year. Datuk Seri, in your speeches earlier, including at the Asia Pacific Roundtable just this year, you highlighted Malaysia's Madani policy and how that is going to steer Malaysia's foreign policy in years to come under your leadership. My question is, how do you connect the Madani policy with the Global South agenda and India's role in it? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, good to know that you're from Jawaharlal Nehru University. It's a great university, and I look forward to visiting it sometime. Yeah, and the Madani principle is. We talk about sustainability. No sustainability without justice or equitable distribution. You talk because, to me, economic growth must be with compassion. Yes, we must propel economic growth. We have all the ecosystem parameters, policies that would be able to be seen to be supportive and able to propel economic growth. But what is to me essential in the Madani framework is that we do put additional emphasis to the issue of values of freedom and justice, because there is deficit in issue of governance and politics, including international politics, and the issue of values, of humanity, of compassion. You talk about religion, minus humanity and compassion. You talk about politics and governance, minus humanity and compassion. So you condone excesses, you condone aggression, you condone intimidation or harassment of groups. And there's no Madani. Madani principle essentially is human principle. And I think it is important to engage and to remind business leaders, political leaders, you see, while politics and governance is important, or business and profit is of paramount importance for country, the economic fundamentals, but it has to be humane. It has to believe in the principles of justice. It must have compassion. Then you honor dignity of men and women. Otherwise, as we have seen, there is trust deficit, there is deficit in terms of moral failure, moral precepts, because how is it you find people can condone killings or discrimination or abuse and insults because they have differences in terms of color or creed or religion? That's because you talk about governance but devoid of the values of compassion and humanity. Well, that's my my view, and not acting on philosophy. But this is so important because people become so pragmatic, so technical, you know, to develop this. You forget the fact that you're dealing with human beings. And without the essence of ihsan or compassion and justice, then you can have great strides, an excellent performance in terms of digital technology or in terms of financial capability or even economic success. But where's the humanity? Where's the equitable distribution? Why do we condone, in the name of IT, a greater divide between the very rich and the very poor? And that's where I think the principle of governance that must not ignore the importance of values, including justice and compassion. Thank you.
No, we are completely out of time now, and all right, one last question.
Thank you for a wonderful speech, and thanks a lot for addressing Gaza in your speech. My question is related to climate change. According to many scientists and some Nobel Prize winners, there is no climate change. Actually, it's a hoax created by deep state just to bring new world order and to destroy middle class. Even Donald Trump considers climate change as a hoax, and in his first term of presidency, US took exit from Paris Climate Summit. What's you?
My dear friend, Mary Dosti, you always hear this, you see, but finally you have to decide based on facts and data. And this is incontrovertible facts to suggest that you can see the decline. I mean, never mind about the scientific basic formula. In all religions and sages, from the great Hindu sages to Islamic thought to and whatever, Western, Eastern, this destruction of land destruction environment, even in a small household, you go and throw everything beside your house, it give you additional smell, and it's intolerable. And I do think it's too difficult to understand. I mean, there are, of course, climate denials, Holocaust denial, there is 9/11 denials. I mean, makes the world rather exciting, and makes some of the odd, features emerging from some quarters. But please go back to the facts and the same. Don't be too surprised when you talk about denial of climate change, issues or problems, because there's also there's denial. I've heard some congressmen in the United States, senators say, what atrocity, what calamity in Gaza? We have not seen any. And this guy is not blind. So there will be. That's why I say the challenge of moral precept of humanity, because of different color or different race, the decision is different. To me, it doesn't matter if whether a Hindu girl or a Muslim girl or Christian girl, if she's raped or she's killed, action must be taken promptly, period. You see, I don't ask. I mean, I'm from Malaysia, and it is a multicultural, multiracial country too. Of course, the majority are Muslims, but we have a significant number of Hindus, 7-8%, and Christians and Buddhists. And I can't say that I am Prime Minister for the Muslims, and I deny the right of the minorities, because there will be denial. I mean, the same principle of the state of denial syndrome. And my worry is not just climate. If you can deny a basic fact like that, there is a danger to humanity at large. So you have to counter them with strong, as I say, incontrovertible facts to defend our case, and don't take it lightly. If students have been, for example, told about this sort of mischief in the name of science, then it has to be fought with reason. And I think ultimately we will win. If we do not win in this sort of battle, then it will be a recipe for disaster for the world. I've heard this in some of my dialogues with the students. They say, why do you choose to listen to the hectoring of the West on climate change, when actually I come from a village, I don't see any problem. I say, please use your motorcycle and go to the towns and see the squatters and the dustbins not available, or the beaches full of plastics. So I think be patient, but have a clear resolve in dealing with these issues. Finally, it is a matter of reason based on facts and data available. And don't ever subscribe to this sort of fringe or aberrations within our society that just simply in a state of denial, because that does not augur well for our society, our countries.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for so graciously taking all these questions. It's been a rare privilege for all of us to listen to your thoughts, especially on humanity and human-centric development. We come to the end of this session now.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a very insightful lecture. I now request Dr. Nivedita Tare, Director of Research, ICWA, to propose the vote of thanks.
Good evening, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Indian Council of World Affairs, it's my pleasure to propose the vote of thanks at the conclusion of the 58th Sapru House lecture by Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, on the theme towards a rising global south, leveraging on Malaysia-India ties. We are very grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister for sharing his insightful perspectives on the rising Global South and how Malaysia envisages consolidating and strengthening ties with India, for shaping a collective future that takes into account the needs and aspirations of the Global South. Malaysia is a key partner for India in ASEAN and our Act East policy. Your Excellency, we greatly value your vision that you have shared with us today on how to develop further our relationship, which now stands elevated to comprehensive strategic partnership for the benefit of the people of the two countries and promotion of peace, security, and development of the region and beyond. I take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to the Embassy of Malaysia, New Delhi, for its support in organizing this lecture, our gratitude to the delegation of Malaysia, to the esteemed representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, to the senior Government of India officials, and also to the scholars, experts, students, and members of the media for your very valuable and engaging participation. Thank you all once again.
Thank you all. This brings us to the end of our program today. I request the members of the audience to be seated till the esteemed dignitary has departed. Thank you.